Okay, so the early new nation, we are starting with the presidency of Washington, and we will end with the first industrial revolution. If I can get this thing going. All right, we good? So, does anybody know what this is? It is a bridge. Good, it's a lock. Excellent. It's a very famous canal. What canal is it? The Erie Canal. Very good. One of the great. Perfect. Well, context clues. Good. It pays to read. All right. It is the Erie Canal. It's Lockport, Erie Canal. It is one of the greatest feats of engineering, not only in America, but in the world. This is a marvel of transportation in the first industrial revolution. This is the direction we're headed in, no pun intended. But we will start with the presidency of George Washington. Washington is elected from Virginia. His vice president is John Adams. At this period of time, when the Electoral College elected a president, the person with the most votes became president, and the person with the second most votes became what? The vice president. That's going to change, though. Okay? Simpler times for sure. Washington is not only unanimously elected once, but twice. He is our only president in American history to be unanimously elected. There's another president that came, bless you, kind of close. That's going to be James Monroe, but we'll deal with that later in this lesson. He's also our only president inaugurated in New York City. How many people have been to NYC? If you've ever been down to Wall Street, to the New York Stock Exchange, across the street is Federal Hall, where he was inaugurated, and there's still a statue commemorating his inauguration there. Challenges. Excellent job earlier on. Taxes, war debt, unity in the nation. Not everybody saw eye to eye. Political division due to parties. Excellent job. So, some of the key events that occurred during his presidency. Creation of the federal court system. So, I don't know if you all realize how the court system goes. It goes from the local level all the way to the state level to the federal level. All right? This was created through two acts, the Judiciary Act of 1789 and the Judiciary Act of 1791. Both of those were signed into law by Washington. He also created a presidential cabinet. This is not a place where we're holding cups and dishes, but this is a group of what? Yes, secretaries or a group of advisors, right? So in that cabinet, we have people like Hamilton, who served as Secretary of Treasury, good job. Jefferson served as Secretary of State, excellent job. There were only 5 cabinet members in the first cabinet. Jefferson, Secretary of State, Foreign Affairs. Hamilton, Secretary of the Treasury. Henry Knox, Secretary of War. Attorney General, Edmund Randolph, the guy that was part of the Virginia Plan. And Samuel Osgood, who was the Postmaster General. That was it. But still, this cabinet was full of small stars. The Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution in December of 1791. Remember, it was written by James Madison in 1789. That was kind of like the last compromise to get the Constitution ratified in the states. Creation of political parties in America. Washington wasn't a fan, but it was inevitable that parties would be established. And remember, the 2 party leaders are going to be Hamilton and Jefferson. The nation's capital is going to be moved. It's initially in New York. It will then move to Philly for a decade, and then its permanent destination will be in Washington, D.C., outside of Virginia. Why might Washington benefit from this? Where does he live? Virginia. Specifically where? Mount Vernon. Very good. Actually, some of the land that was handed over by him. And he oversaw a great deal of the process. Some important people involved in the development of the Capitol: Benjamin Banneker and Pierre Lafont. Have you all ever heard of these guys before?
No.
Okay. Benjamin Banneker is one of the most important free African Americans of this era. He was a clockmaker, an astronomer, and a surveyor, and Pierre Lafont was a French architect and designer. Pretty remarkable that a free African American was part of this process. The ultimate test, and I need everybody to hang in here with me, because this is arguably the most important event in Washington's presidency that tested the Constitution, is going to be the Whiskey Rebellion. The Whiskey Rebellion was actually caused because of a tax that was placed on alcohol. Why would they put an excise tax on booze in America, notably whiskey? Well, it's popular, and they're in debt. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's good. It's good. Obviously, with some religious groups and a lot of people, it's not going to be popular, but a lot of people were boozing it up in this period of American history. Excellent job over here. This is a popular good that can be taxed, and there's a debt to be paid. Sure, that's a good comparison, right? But there's a problem with this tax, and that is the people who mass produce whiskey are being taxed less than the people that are just making whiskey for either their own consumption, or why might people just be producing their own whiskey? For what?
To sell?
Yes, it's their commodity. There's not a lot of cash flow. So they can be like, hey, here's some booze for a pig or whatever, you know? So you're like trading. So this all comes to a head in Western Pennsylvania when a group, well, there's a revenue inspector, a tax collector, who basically got his house burned to the ground because a woman had been arrested for not paying the taxes on whiskey. And this whole thing erupts, and what will Washington do in response? He and Hamilton raise an army of 13,000, march to Western Pennsylvania and say, pay your taxes or go to war. What do? No, they pay the taxes. This is the first test of the Constitution, and the Constitution passed. So, again, like I said, after Shays' Rebellion, we're not done with rebellions. There'll be other rebellions that are going to pop up, like the Whiskey Rebellion. Washington will serve just 2 terms in office. Top left, we have Washington's cabinet. Center here, the Bill of Rights. Top right, Madison, author of the Bill of Rights. Bottom left, Benjamin Banneker, surveyor of the Capitol. Center, Pierre Lafont, designer of the Capitol. And on the right there, Washington and the Whiskey Rebellion. Questions up to this point? Okay. This is a little review from lesson 7 that I just kind of wanted to go back over, and that's an overview of the 2 parties. On the left, we have the Federalist Party, created by Hamilton. They favored a strong national government. They wanted limits on states' powers. Obviously, Hamilton had laid that out in what papers? Very good, the Federalist Papers. They favored industry because if they don't manufacture their goods, where will the goods have to come from?
Other countries.
Foreign countries. Very good. Favored a national bank or U.S. banking system that looked a whole lot like what countries?
England.
England. Very good. Remember, Often we remember Hamilton for his contribution with the Federalist Papers, but one of his other really important contributions will be the Report on Public Credit, which talks about assuming the state debts and sort of laying out the framework for the national banking system and the Treasury Department. The Federalists were far more aligned with England. As we know, Jay's Treaty, we learned about early in Lesson 7, was a trade treaty with England for about 10 years. Over on the right, the Democratic Republican Party, created by Jefferson, favored stronger power in the states, favored small business and farming. How many people have been to Monticello? Okay, a lot of you have probably visited. In Jefferson's mind, Monticello is this like southern utopian Democratic Republican society where he farms and he manufactures nails. I don't know if you realize that. But where's the labor? Slave labor, right? You guys will probably think I hate Jefferson by the end of this, but I like to point out the contradiction. Near Charlottesville. So about an hour away. Maybe like an hour or 10. Highly recommend checking it out. I bring up the slave issue because many of the Democratic Republicans are going to be slaveholders, or they are going to have some sort of advantage from the status quo of slavery. And that's going to carry us toward the Civil War. So we'll be talking about that as we move forward. They opposed the creation of the U.S. banking system, far more aligned with France. I mean, obviously, Jefferson loved the French and the French loved Jefferson. There are only 3 Americans with statues in Paris. Who are they? Jefferson, Franklin, and Washington. There's your 3. Ultimately, Thomas Jefferson and Madison will broker a deal, a backroom deal with Hamilton, in which Hamilton gets the national bank and gets the assumption of the state debts, and the Southerners will get the capital. For my Hamilton fans, room where it happens. Room where it happens. Anybody watched Hamilton recently? Since Lesson 7? Has anyone been inspired? No? Okay. All right. You all will be spending a great deal of time in the future with the Bill of Rights. That is why I've decided to summarize the Bill of Rights in a bit of a nutshell version for you. All right? By the end of this course, you will have covered all of the amendments. I'm going to give you a good foundation. All right? So remember, Madison is chosen to write the Bill of Rights. This is a compromise. The ultimate compromise to get the Constitution to be ratified. George Mason's Virginia Declaration of Rights will serve as the blueprint. Here they are. Sorry. First Amendment, freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, petition. Arguably one of, if not the most important individual rights we have. I would put it neck and neck with the 14th Amendment, which I'll teach you about later. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. That was mainly, for militia. Third Amendment, soldiers can't be housed in civilian homes during peacetime. That is in reference to what during the Revolution? Quartering Act. Very good. Fourth Amendment, no unreasonable searches and seizures. All searches require warrants. Were people's homes searched without warrants during the Revolution? For sure. Fifth Amendment, the right to refuse to speak during a civil trial. Self-incrimination. That's when you don't incriminate yourself in a trial, you say, I plead the what? Fifth. This also prevents double jeopardy, being tried for the same offense twice. Sixth Amendment, right to a speedy and public trial. Seventh Amendment, right to a trial by jury when the sum exceeds $20. And the Eighth Amendment, no excessive bails and or fines. Check it out. All of the first 8 are tied in some way, shape, or form to the Revolutionary Era. That's the reason they were attached to the Constitution. 9 and 10 don't seem important, but they are. 9, other rights not enumerated. You know what that word means? Enumerated means given. All right? Little vocab for you today. All rights not enumerated or given are also in effect. This is known as the People's Rights Amendment. A lot of people, at least until the 14th Amendment was passed, would lean on the 9th Amendment for individual rights. 10th Amendment doesn't seem that important, but it is. Unlisted powers belong to the state. This is often referred to as the States' Rights Amendment. This is, guys, in reference to, as we move forward toward the Civil War, the southern states will lean on the 10th Amendment, claiming, hey, it's our state's right to practice what? Slavery. Very good. So we're going to talk more about 9 and 10 as we move forward. Washington's farewell. It starts a tradition here. Presidential's farewell address. Washington is a 2-termer. He sets the 2-term precedent until FDR. How many terms did FDR serve? 3. How many was he elected to? 4. He served like 3 terms in a month. It won't come until later. Does anybody know what amendment requires a 2-term? Requires 2 terms? Or, no, I'm sorry. No more than 2 terms. It's the 22nd Amendment. Talk more about that later. In Washington's farewell address, he warns against the creation of the political party system, believing that it would further divide the nation. Entangling alliances with foreign nations. He wanted neutrality with France and England. What's going on in France? Very good. Not only is the French Revolution going down, who is France also at war with? England. Excellent job. Y'all learned a little bit about the French Revolution in the past. All right. Native American assimilation. He warns that if the Native American tribes are not assimilated into American society, what will continue? What's been going on with Native Americans since the beginning? War. Very good. Domestic and treatment of American veterans. He refers back to Shays' Rebellion. Domestic and economic stability. And the divisive issue of slavery, which is a bit ironic because he himself is a slaveholder. But this is prophetic because that issue is going to carry us to Civil War. Washington set the country on its feet, somewhat sturdy. Sadly, he only has about 3 years of a private life. He'll die just 3 years after his presidency of a throne. He could have been saved, but what method do you think they used that ended up killing him? Yeah, they let him out. Yeah, well, I think rough stuff. All right. So, our second president of the United States, John Adams. How am I doing over here?
6 minutes, 15 seconds.
Yes. Huzzah. Here we go. Elected for Massachusetts. Vice president under Washington. However, he's first. Thomas Jefferson is second. Why is this controversial and problematic for him? What are they not the same of? They're not of the same what? Party. Very good. They are different political parties. Jefferson is going to create problems for him as president. So much so that before the term even ends, Jefferson leaves Philadelphia and just goes back to Monticello. All right? Adams is going to be a one-term president. Just one term. But in his single term, a whole lot happens. First, we have the incident known as the XYZ affair and the quasi-war. Because France is at war with England and devouring itself in its own revolution, France decides to seize about 300 American merchant ships and hold them for ransom to try to make some quick cash. American diplomats refuse to pay the ransom, return to America, and refer to the agents as X, Y, and Z. Will not refer to them by their names. This will ultimately lead to what is called the quasi-war. It splits the Federalist Party in two. Those who are ready to go to war get in line with Hamilton. Those who want peace get in line with John Adams. In the end, a treaty is brokered to prevent war, known as the Treaty of Mortefontaine. This is a good thing. Why can America not fight in this war? Why do we not have the ability to do it? We don't have the men and we don't have a navy. All right? We have like a few thousand people in the army right now and we have no navy. So one of Adams' crowning achievements is creating the U.S. Navy. But in response to all this, he does something that totally ruins his political career. He passes the Alien Act and Sedition Act. The Alien Act said that if anyone immigrated to America that seemed that they were a threat to democracy and American society, they could be deported. The country that this act was passed against were mainly French coming into America at this time. The Sedition Act said that no one could write nor say anything seditious or libel about government officials because the press had been heavily criticizing Adams. What amendment does that violate? The first. Very good. So this will give Jefferson and Madison all the ammunition they need. They're going to write what are called the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. This may seem insanely boring, all right? I'm not even going to try to make it super cool and interesting because it seems like a horrific bore, but it is important. And this is what it basically says. If the federal government passes a law that violates the individual rights or the state's rights, the people in the state have the right to declare that law null and void. Boring, but important. Because, guys, as we move to the American Civil War, the South is going to start leaning on the rhetoric from the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions by saying, oh, well, the author of the Declaration of Independence and the author of the Constitution and Bill of Rights said we don't have to abide by laws we don't agree with. So we can either null and void laws or we can break away and secede. See where I'm going with this? We're not done with these. We're going to come back to them and talk about the Virginia and Kentucky resolution later. Arguably, Adams' greatest legacy, guys, is the appointment of Chief Justice John Marshall. Marshall, guys, sits as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for 34 years. You'd be lucky to live to see 34 in this era. The guy sat on the bench for 34 years, and he set the precedent for the entire judicial branch. All right? he will establish the precedent and power of judicial review. We're going to talk more about Marshall and his legacy as we move forward. So, we wrap up with this cartoon. I love this one. It shows, check it out, Lady Liberty being distracted by the French and being robbed. They're plucking at her feathers in her crown here. What do those feathers represent? The states. Very good. Check it out. In the distance, European leaders with their backs turned, and look who's sitting up there laughing on the hill. Not George Washington. George III. The British are laughing. Isn't that a great cartoon? I got a lot of really good political cartoons coming your way.
Office is right there, buddy. Let me walk you down.
That is